I've lived here since 2012, and this is my stomping grounds. I've been stomping these grounds since I was 19 years old, and I'm just overwhelmed. I've been here trying to spread, some kind of comfort, some kind of support, but this is an overwhelming situation. I don't think we've ever had anything like this, except that guy that died in Kennedy Park that got beat up, but that's been a while. And I'll tell you, my insides are just really sick over this. I've heard people that down there by the doors that have family members in there. There was a girl down there with 5 people, all got shot up. And they're like frantic. What are you going to do? And I can just feel the vibes from other people. So yeah, this is not good.
Gun violence has terrorized and traumatized so many of our communities in this country. And let us be clear, it does not have to be this way, as our friends in Australia have demonstrated.
All right, guys, so unfortunately we got to talk about yet again another tragedy. My least favorite subjects to talk about, because I never like talking about the loss of innocent life. But we got to talk about this one because this was yet again another mass shooting, something that we're seeing quite a bit in this country, okay? And Democrats and liberals tend to always want to use tragedy to push their political agenda. And this situation right here is no different, as we have to go out to Lewiston, Maine, where at least 22 people are dead, and that number is probably going to rise, unfortunately, as manhunt intensifies for person of interest Robert Card. Now, Robert Card is the person of interest that went into a couple of establishments and started open firing at civilians. Now, Mr. Robert Card has an interesting background. He was in the reserves. He also allegedly was a firearms instructor, and he also had a recent battle with mental health. Now, again, this guy is on the loose, and the situation remains very fluid as they are looking for him. So, again, part of the reason why I'm doing this video is because this guy could quite literally be anywhere, okay? And people should see his face and understand and be able to recognize him, because he is considered armed and dangerous. And I am praying for the victims, the families, and that this guy is caught and brought to justice. So I want to go ahead and play a news clip so you guys can get a better understanding of what happened here. And then we're going to get into some of the reactions from the left, because nobody should be surprised in regards to what they are saying. They're trying to take full-blown advantage of this to score political points, which is typical of the left.
A manhunt is still underway for the man who opened fire in multiple locations in Maine, killing 18 people, injuring more than a dozen others. Police there just held an update a short time ago on the search. Let's bring in Antoine Lewis for the very latest from Maine. Antoine.
We actually have new information coming in just moments ago. A U.S. official says that the suspect was taken by police for an evaluation after acting erratically at West Point Military Academy here in New York back in July. Now, this is all going on as a shelter-in-place order remains in effect for residents of 3 Maine towns during this, as the search for the suspect continues. Here's what happened. This happened last night just around 7 o'clock. Police say that a man, that gentleman you see right there, that person, fired at least at 2 locations, opening fire there, bowling alley and then a bar in Lewiston, Maine. Officials say that 18 people have been killed, another 13 have been injured. That person has been identified as 40-year-old Robert Card. He is the person that they are looking for. Arrest warrants have been issued as of this morning. Investigators say that he is considered armed and dangerous. A police bulletin notes that Card was a firearms instructor and believed to be a member of the Army Reserve. And there are also reports that Robert Card spent time in a mental treatment facility last summer.
There are still many things we don't yet know about these attacks, but the full weight of my administration is behind law enforcement's efforts to capture the person of interest, Robert Card, to hold whoever's responsible for this atrocity accountable under the full force of state and federal law, and to seek full justice for the victims and their families.
Authorities have identified 18 of those victims. They are still in the process, Chris, of notifying next of kin for the others. The governor and authorities are also saying that a motive has yet to be determined. I'll have more at 5 o'clock.
All right, stay on top of that, Antoine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, as of the making of this video, which is about 5:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, this guy still has not been apprehended. He hasn't been caught, okay? And I'm hoping that he gets caught, and I'm hoping that we can get more information in regards to why this happened or how this was allowed to happen. However, Democrats, they don't want to wait. They don't want to wait for the full story. They don't want to wait for the facts to come out for us to actually really understand how this happened. No. They're already trying to use this as a way to push for policies that have not proven to actually help stop mass shootings. Like, for example, banning so-called assault weapons, which is what Karine Jean-Pierre, the affirmative action press secretary, came out and advocated for today in response. Take a look.
There have been literally hundreds of mass shootings in the last year alone, leaving empty seats at dinner tables across the country and leaving those who survive these heinous acts both physically and mentally scarred. And while we have made progress since the president signed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act into law, much more must be done. And the president has been clear that executive action alone is just not enough. As the vice president who oversees the newly established Office of Gun Violence and Prevention, stated during today's state luncheon, I know many of you watched very closely as well, and she said, it doesn't have to be this way. As our friends in Australia have demonstrated, again, it does not have to be this way. It's within Congress's power to pass legislation that will make our streets safer, that will make our communities safer, that will make our schools safer. The House has a new speaker who he said he's ready to get to work and to find common ground. Now is the time. Now is the time to find common ground. Let's work together to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Let's work together to enact universal background checks, require safe storage of guns, and keep guns out of the hands of criminals and dangerous individuals who have no business being armed with a weapon of war.
Now, according to the liberal media, the weapon that was used was a semi-automatic rifle with an extended magazine and scope, which by definition, because it's a semi-automatic, is not an assault rifle, is also not a so-called weapon of war, because assault rifles and so-called weapons of war are fully automatic. What Democrats want to ban is not so-called weapons of war, okay? They don't want to ban those because it's already hard for the average citizen to get access to those. They want to ban modern sporting rifles, which that's what an AR-15 is. It is a modern sporting rifle that is semi-automatic. Democrats, every single time this happens, they claim that they want to stop crime and stop gun violence, but yet they want to be soft on crime, right? If you really want to stop crime and you want to stop gun violence, then you need to stop demonizing police, defunding police, having these woke DAs be soft on crime and actually lock criminals up and throw away the key. They don't want to do that, though. They don't want to do that. What they rather do is use an incident like this, in which you have a man that clearly is going through mental issues, mental troubles. He snaps and commits an act of violence, even after allegedly warning people that he was liable to do something like this, right? Something that, in my opinion, could have been prevented, should have been prevented. Democrats don't have any legislation that could have prevented it, right? They don't want to talk about, again, the mental health aspect of it. Okay. They, again, rather take advantage of when you have an incident like this that happens because an individual snapped, right? Some lunatic snapped, and they want to enact legislation that does nothing but give Democrats more power and control and does nothing to actually save lives. Because there is no proof, there is no evidence that the assault weapons ban that Joe Biden keeps touting actually saves lives or that it stops mass shootings. There's no evidence whatsoever. Okay? The evidence is inconclusive. Okay? Even according to liberal fact checkers. But again, that doesn't stop networks like MSNBC for going even further than the Democrats are and basically low-key trying to blame the voters of Maine who have a culture of hunting, using their sporting rifles for recreational purposes to, again, hunt, okay? It is a part of their culture. It's ingrained in their culture. They have a very low crime rate in their state. Generally speaking, this is not a problem. They want to low-key kind of place the blame on them for refusing to vote for tougher restrictions on guns.
Folks who are pushing for tougher gun laws, though, will tell you that the time for thoughts and prayers has long since passed. In Maine, though, efforts to tighten state laws have repeatedly been defeated. The Associated Press reports that proposals that require background checks for private gun sales and create a 72-hour waiting period for gun purchases failed earlier this year. Proposals that focused on school security and banning bump stocks failed in 2019. State residents have also voted down some attempts to tighten gun laws in Maine. And it goes on. I want to bring in NBC's Lindsay Reiser, who you have been looking into, and Catherine is with us as well, former assistant DA in the Manhattan DA's office. You've been looking into Maine's gun laws. What did you find?
And they do have relatively low homicide rates compared to rates of high gun ownership. Last year alone, they had only 29 homicides. And there is a strong gun ownership culture in Maine. It goes back to hunting and sports shooting. At the same time, they have permitless carry. So anyone 21 and older can carry a gun without a permit. If you're 18 to 20, you need a permit to carry a weapon unless you serve in the armed forces or you're in the National Guard. And there are exceptions. Federal buildings, the state capitol, Acadia National Park, you need a permit to carry there. We know that they don't require background checks for all gun sales, just for federally licensed dealers. So private sales, gun shows, those don't require background checks. And they do have a yellow flag law. So that differs from a red flag law, which really just requires a court order with testimony from a police officer or a family member to revoke the privilege to have a gun. The yellow flag law also requires a medical evaluation, and so that can now be done through telehealth. And many of the local publications in Maine are saying that it's being used more since that was allowed. And they also don't ban high-capacity magazines. You mentioned gun control advocates. Many of them are blaming this tragic mass shooting on what they call Maine's weak gun laws, and they are calling for an assault rifle ban, also universal background checks. But just as you mentioned, voters have voted down proposals that would strengthen gun laws in recent years.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Okay, they're low-key passing the blame to voters, trying to say, well, you voted for this. You voted for this mass shooter to commit this acts of violence because you didn't want to infringe on your right. And the fact that your state, despite the high rate of gun ownership, has a relatively low homicide rate. Now, again, that's a conversation that the left also doesn't want to get into in regards to the demographic makeup of Maine and why that is a low crime state, low violence state, and the fact that you can have a whole bunch of people walking around with guns. And generally speaking, you don't have to worry too much. So you have one incident that is out of the norm. And now all of a sudden, again, these people want to say, well, you need to ban all guns, right? You need to ban all so-called assault weapons, right? Which, again, they really want to ban modern sporting rifles. That's what they actually really want to ban. And then from there, they'll go and ban handguns. And then they might go ahead and ban shotguns as well, too. That's essentially what they want in the long term, okay? That's the quiet part that they actually want. But again, what they don't ask is, well, this person was in a mental health facility for a few weeks and he was released. Well, what did they do at the mental health facility, right? And the cops were aware of him as well, too. And some of the statements that he's made, what did they do to him? How did they treat him? Okay, did they just give him some pills and send him on his way? Or did they, go through a thorough evaluation of, what was going on with him? Like, again, there are more questions about why didn't we do more from a mental health perspective to prevent this from happening. In my opinion, I think that's where the focus should be, rather than talking about trying to infringe on people's rights. Because I'm of the mindset when it comes to this. I'm very well aware that in society, there are no solutions. There's only trade-offs, right? And I'll be open up front about this, and people may, disagree with me on this, but this is how I feel. I'm well aware that there are negative consequences to having our fundamental right to keep and bear arms, right? That you're going to have lunatics that get access to the arms and they're going to commit acts of violence. However, I am willing to live with that trade-off of knowing that, well, the average citizen can protect themselves not only from criminals who, regardless of gun restrictions or gun laws, are going to get access to guns. Citizens can protect themselves because they have the right to be armed, and citizens can also protect themselves just in case the government becomes tyrannical or we're invaded by another country or something happens. Again, if you're paying attention to what's happening overseas, okay, we're talking about places like Israel, Ukraine, etc. I think people are reminded of how important it is that we have the right to keep and bear arms so that you can defend yourself and defend your home when, just in case somebody tries to invade, right? And that's something that's not talked about, okay? It's not talked about. But again, instead of actually waiting for all the facts to come out, actually waiting for the guy to get caught, which at this point, we don't really know where the guy is at. Apparently, he may have had access to boats where he could be off, in the water somewhere out, in a river or a lake somewhere. We don't know, but I'm just saying, like, before even all the facts can be evaluated, they're already trying to blame voters and call to take away people's rights. And again, they don't have any evidence that the things they propose outside of banning all guns is actually going to fix the problem. And again, if you ban all guns, what are the trade-offs of that? The trade-offs is that you have a society that is now susceptible to tyranny from the government. Now you are defenseless against criminals who will get access to guns. So, in my opinion, in situations like this where Democrats, once again, disgustingly try to blame conservatives or, Republicans for the actions of one individual. One individual snapped, apparently, and did this, and now you're trying to punish the rest of society for it when, again, this is something that is very rare in that state in the grand scheme of things. So, yeah, I mean, when you do have the right to keep and bear arms, which clearly that's a part of Maine's culture, that's what they value, you are taking a chance that something like this is going to happen. Some individual is going to have a mental health issue. They're going to snap and, they're going to do something like this. But I would much rather have a society that is armed to better defend themselves and to actually be investing in mental health to try to get these individuals help, not just throw them in a hospital and then, let them out, even if they're clearly still struggling. Okay. Again, I got a lot of questions about what they did when he was there. Okay. I'm just saying, like, I would rather invest in mental health and allow people to defend themselves than the alternative of taking away people's rights. And then the people are now, again, susceptible to violence from the government, and criminals now have an advantage, a weaponry advantage over average everyday citizens. So again, there's more questions than answers here. And again, of course, Democrats and mainstream liberal media can't wait for the facts before pushing their narrative to take away people's rights. Again, this is typical Democrat response to a tragedy, which is to try to take advantage of it for political gain and brownie points. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.